What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with what actually will be my final NBA draft scouting report. So I did Ante Zizic earlier today. Like I said, there were two that I wanted to do that I never got to do, that I figured would be good to finish it off with. And right now I want to do Wade Baldwin. So he is a 6'3", 195-pound freshman, point guard out of Vanderbilt, 20 years old, 6'11" wingspan from Metuchen, something like that, New Jersey. So yeah, get into some of his strengths. First one is the most obvious one that comes to mind when you think of Wade Baldwin, at least if you know who he is, if you watched him play, and that's wingspan. The dude's got a freakishly large wingspan for being 6'3", at 6'11". I believe it's almost 7 feet. At 20 years old, probably not going to get much big. I don't know. Might top out at 7 feet. Who knows? But it comes into play for multiple things. Obviously, the bigger the wingspan of basketball, the lankier you are, probably the better. Helps him out with, should be able to help him out with, driving, being able to shield the ball, get to the rim, be able to get over defenders, obviously help out with a lot of things on defense. And it's just a big drawing point for him as a whole. I think his exposure at the combine helped him, at least helped his draft stock massively. This was a guy that had a rough end to the season, and with that combine, I think he moved himself back up into the first round at least. So second strength is his facilitating ability. So while he is a good point guard, he's not the best dribbler. You can see potential there. He's got very good lateral quickness. That's one of his very underrated abilities, is his ability to keep his momentum going to the rim. And drive and kick is a potential. It's something that's there. It's something that can be a good part of his game. If he can improve his slashing ability, then really there's not that many limits for him as a point guard. He's a very different style point guard. Obviously, the wingspan, he has to use that to his advantage, and not many point guards have. I mean, I don't know of a single point guard that has that type of wingspan. So, I mean, again, that's what you get when you're drafting him, is just the potential that he can use for his, like I said, his lateral quickness and wingspan, I believe, are two of his biggest strengths. Obviously, the wingspan's more known than the other. But to say he's a bad dribbler would be, would not be giving enough credit. So, like I said, I'm not even getting to the main point here. His passing ability, it's good. It's got to be more consistent, though. The potential is definitely there. It's definitely one of his strong suits, and should be able to, in my opinion, should be able to be a guy that can get you 6 to 8 assists in the NBA. 5.2 assists per game in 30 minutes, so around 7 assists per 40. Not great, not terrible. Get on to his next strength, which is his outside shooting. Considering he was only about a 44% shooter from two, and then 43 overall. The fact that he was like a 41% shooter, I believe 40.6 to be exact, very impressive. That's obviously a good 3-point percentage. And to be honest, if he can get better at driving, you can see that field goal percentage get up around 47. 44% is by no means bad, but for a guy that relies pretty heavily on his shooting, that's something that you would like to see improve. Few other things for him. He does get to the free throw line a decent amount, about 6 times per game. 80% free throw shooter, good. That's pretty much something that you look for. And it takes about 10 shots per game. So not an overly aggressive amount, but definitely gets his shots, averages about 14 points per game as well. So last strength is his defensive upside. Now, there's a lot you can talk about here. Like I said, with the fact that he is very good that he's very good laterally. He's got decent agility. He doesn't have an elite burst. Like, it seems like when you watch him dribble, and sometimes with the lateral quickness, agility, the acceleration should be there. The indications are that it should, but it's really not. I don't know. Probably not something that's going to come along, but I think something that he should be able to use to his advantage. This guy should be a guy that can guard two positions. He should be able to guard the 1 and the 2 spot. With his lankiness, his upper body strength, he is very strong on the upper body. Should be able to handle contact and really develop into one of the better defenders in the NBA after he makes that jump. Look at a few of his stats. Had about 1.2 steals per game, so good, not great, and about 4 rebounds per game. He's probably not going to be a guy that gets you a whole lot of rebounds. He doesn't have a whole lot of vertical ability at about, 38 max for it's not bad though. Anyway, or 38-inch max vertical. That's not bad, but again, a guy that I could see developing into being one of the best defenders in this draft. He has one of the highest defensive upsides of any player in this draft, like I said, just because of the measurables and some of the ability that he's shown in college. So getting into some of his weaknesses, first one of his is athleticism and aggressiveness. He's not aggressive. He doesn't handle contact extraordinarily well. He's got to be able to get more comfortable and be able to handle contact and be able to initiate contact a little bit better when he's driving and when he's around the rim. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. He doesn't have like I said, he doesn't have the strongest initial burst, so he's got to be able to use that somehow. He's not straight line speed. He's not very fast. Acceleration's not really there. Vertical's not really there. Lower body strength will probably come along, but again, something that needs to be developed also. Upper body strength is definitely something that's already there. So if he can get a little bit more aggressive, like I said, be able to handle contact in the ways that I mentioned a little bit earlier, and develop that lower body strength so he can get a little bit more of a drive, then again, could be a little bit more dangerous offensive player, a little bit harder to stop. So second weakness for him is turnovers. So this might sound weird since I mentioned earlier how good of a facilitator he is. Like I said, a lot of it's just potential, upside, that sort of thing. You can see the passes in his game. It was a guy that averaged actually only about 1.5 to 2 turnovers per game at the beginning of the year. I'll mention a little bit more with his inconsistencies for that later. But still, he did average 2.8 turnovers per game. That is a lot, but 5.2 assists. So it is good to see that his turnovers were about cut in half from his assists. But again, as a point guard, that's something you want to see diminished a little bit. You don't want to end up like a Russell Westbrook type you do want to end up as a Russell Westbrook type, but when you're talking about turnovers and efficiency, that's not that's not something you want to strive for. And again, I think this is something that can come along with improved decision making when it comes to him making the jump to the NBA. But it is something that you're gonna have to keep in mind, especially for the team that drafts him. If he gets drafted to your team, just know that it's probably gonna take about a year or two for him to start and be able to be efficient and not be a guy that can get 3 to 4 turnovers per game. He was playing in the SEC too, not the best basketball conference. So, he was playing against some teams like Kentucky. LSU at times was good. Texas A&M was good. But that was about it. One of the weaker basketball conferences. So you would expect him to be a little bit better down the stretch, considering he was playing for one of the better teams in the SEC. And he had a good guy in Damian Jones to dump it down low. And it seemed like he didn't take full advantage of that. You hope that's something that can come along also, is just being able to be a little bit more aware of the teammates that are around you. So third weakness is just his overall production. So again, it's more production consistency than anything. But you think, like I said, in the situation he was in, this could have easily been a guy that averaged you 17, 18 points per game while also shooting 47 or 48%. While this is a weakness, this is also kind of a potential thing, an upside thing, just a lack of polish maybe. Again, he is only a freshman, 20 years old, so can't hurt him from maybe being a little bit inexperienced, a little bit unpolished. I believe he was. Actually, I've been saying he's a freshman the entire time. I believe he is a sophomore. So, but anyway, like I said, still 20 years old, still has time to develop either way. And if he can be a little bit more consistent as I'd say as an aggressor, as a facilitator, then I feel like the consistency can come along. Now, I feel like when teams figure out that you're a little bit less aggressive and athletic than you first appear to be, obviously it's easy to change your game plan to that sort of style of play. Obviously, all you got to do is just be a little bit more aggressive with the guy. But again, the combination of his wingspan and potential to be able to drive and dominate, go to the rim, use the upper body strength, but also be an outside shooter. Again, that's a lethal combination if he can develop that facilitating and turn it over less. Like I said, just needs to be a little bit more consistent with the production. He had a rough final 2 months of the year. Vanderbilt started out as I believe 7 or 8-0 team, and then ended up as a team. I don't think they made it to the tournament. Did they? Yeah, they did. Yeah, I believe they lost in the first round to Wichita State. So, again, decent team. Felt like they could have been one of those teams of destiny this year. Just young, good, fast. Some guys that are more athletic than most of the rest of college basketball, and Damian Jones and Wade Baldwin. But again, a situation where maybe the guys were just too young, didn't mix. I don't know. But get into some of his, like I said, where I think he's going to go in the draft. Best fits, NBA projections, that sort of deal that I always talk about. So I actually just did my 2016 NBA mock draft post lottery today. If you're not watching, then lottery actually happened. I had him going at number 26 to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I think Wade Baldwin can fit in a lot of situations. Again, he's got the tools that a lot of teams could love, that could definitely use. When you're talking about actual best fits for him, I'd say you'd obviously have to look to later in the first round, maybe mid to late first round. He has seen like I said, he has seen a rise in his stock, but I don't know how exactly high that stock has gone. Again, some of the better fits to me are. Now this is hinging on the fact that they lose Jeff Teague, but I'm going to say the Atlanta Hawks. Keep that in mind. That's hinging on the fact that they lose Jeff Teague. A few other fits that I like. Like I said, the Philadelphia 76ers I do like. I think that's a situation where you can go in and actually be a good fix if they do decide, hey, let's finally compete. And then two other good fits that I like are the Detroit Pistons and the Memphis Grizzlies. Again, Memphis Grizzlies hinging on the fact that they lose Mike Conley. Detroit, he'd go into a situation where he'd be behind a point guard that is the aggressor in Reggie Jackson. He could be that second point guard in line if Reggie Jackson does decide to leave Detroit. Then that could be Wade Baldwin's team. If not, then you can add another good rotation player to a team that's up and coming. So, talk about where I think he's going to go in the draft, because I kind of started in reverse order with talking about his best fits. Like I said, I think he will be a mid to late first round pick. Actually, the last NBA draft on that mock draft had him going at number 35 to the Boston Celtics, but the last Bleach Report mock draft had him going at number 16, ironically, to the Boston Celtics also. And then the last Draft Express mock draft had him going at number 14 to the Chicago Bulls. Now, I think, like I said, I think he will be mid to late second round or mid to late first round. I'd say probably looking at the 17 to 27 range. Maybe 17 to 25, 17 to 26. Like I said, I've had him at number 26. I think his weaknesses are a little bit more glaring than some people think. There are some more intriguing players in this draft that I think. I just think this guy has a high risk of being a bust in this draft. You see a lot of guys like this with this type of these type of tools that end up just being a little, I won't say too weak, because I feel like that's just too big of a knock against them, but just not really being able to handle that next step and not being able to develop into the player that a lot of people think he can be. All right, so when you're talking about stats projections for his first year, it's hard to say. I don't think he's going to be a guy that jumps in, starts from day one. Again, a late first-round pick, that's just asking a little bit too much out of that player. I think he is a guy that can start year two. Again, it completely hinges on how he develops. This also seems like a guy that gets drafted to a playoff team and then gets thrown in late. But if he is like the 7th or 8th man in the rotation his first year, like he probably will be, then I think you're looking at a guy that's averaging around 8 points per game, probably about 5 assists, which is actually pretty good averages. But I think this is a guy that can average you, like I said, a decent amount of assists and points per game because he has that potential to do that. So that pretty much does it for this video. Like I said, this should be my last scouting report. If you've not seen my NBA mock draft yet, I'll put the link to that in the description below. Should be my last one before I come along and do my final 2-round mock draft before the NBA draft in June. But yeah, like I said, the scouting reports have been fun. I think this is all that I think this is it. This is probably going to be it. I can't really think of anyone else that is just big enough or intriguing enough to me to be able to do the scouting report. Like I said, there's other players that you could talk about a lot that I've been looking at. Kay Felder, Malcolm Brogdon, Michael Benajay, Drawn Blossom Game, those types. But again, just not big enough to me to be able to do those individually. Or there's already a lot of other scouting reports of them on YouTube that would be very similar to mine, so there's really no point in me doing it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.